Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and a warm welcome to the Think Asia, Think Hong Kong Symposium. This morning, we are deeply honored by the presence of the Secretary of Commerce and Economic Development, Mr. Greg So, the State Controller, Mr. John Chiang, and the County Supervisor, Michael Antonovich. Welcome, gentlemen. Both gentlemen will give us a keynote speech, and Mr. Antonovich will also say a few words later. For this promotion, we are bringing over a delegation of 200 business leaders from Hong Kong, including 30 from mainland China. And 40 speakers over the rest of the day will give us their presentations and try to convince you why Asia, especially China, holds such a vast potential for American businessmen, and why Hong Kong is the most effective gateway to that market. The promotion actually rides on the success of a program that TDC engaged in with the Department of Commerce since 2010, and that program is called Pacific Bridge Initiative, which is to encourage U.S. companies to export to Asia, especially China. And this promotion over the course of this week takes place in 2 cities in the U.S. In New York, 2 days ago, we had a similar symposium in New York, attended by over 1,200 companies in that area. We picked New York because it's the financial center of the U.S. And today, we've come to Los Angeles, the undisputed gateway to the Americas. And I'm greatly encouraged by the turnout today. LA being the gateway to the Americas was long recognized by Hong Kong and the TDC. Actually, back in the 1970s, we already established our first office here in LA. And that was the time when Hong Kong was in manufacturing for export economy. And Hong Kong has experienced a lot of changes since then. From a manufacturing center, we have transformed into a re-export and distribution center. And for the past 10 years, Hong Kong is a service economy. The service sector accounts for 95% of our GDP. Similarly, Asia, especially China, has gone through a lot of changes. China used to be one of the poor countries of the world. It is now the world's second largest economy. China used to be just manufacturing base for export. It is now a vast market for products and services, as well as a source for outward investment. Many Chinese companies, state companies, private companies, are already looking for investment opportunities abroad, including the US. And China's fast-growing middle class is gobbling up as much as 45% of the world's luxury goods. That's according to Bain Consulting last year. And China produced more outward tourists than any other country. Many US companies are already benefiting from this trend, including Disney. The vice president is here with us. Any US companies that you can name, Boeing, General Motors, General Electric, Starbucks, they're all there selling into China. And Chinese investors are brought to US shores by investment companies, by US lawyers, accounting firms, at an increasing rate. These trends should bode very well for the US economy and have a positive impact on US jobs if more US companies are encouraged to develop the market and develop that market through Hong Kong. And TDC is here to help. Of course, many of you may ask, why come through Hong Kong when you can go directly to Shanghai or Beijing? Well, throughout the day, we have very effective speakers to convince you that Hong Kong is the most effective gateway, both in the morning plenary session and in the breakout sessions in the afternoon, which will specialize on different subjects, such as selling to China, technology, Hong Kong as a service platform, outward investment from China, and last but not least, entertainment and film industry. Entertainment and film industry is very close to the heart of both LA and Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has become the world's second largest film market thanks to the robust growth of the film industry in China. So our two cities have a lot in common and have a lot to talk about. For those of you who have individual plans and aspirations, there are many legal firms, accounting firms, consultancy companies downstairs in the foyer to discuss with you on your personal and individual problems. So whatever your product, whatever your service, we can find a market for you in Hong Kong, in Asia, through Hong Kong. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to say a word of thanks to all of our U.S. supporters, including the Department of Commerce, the State Controller's Office, the Mayor's Office, and my personal thanks to the delegates from Hong Kong and from China, particularly the speakers in this morning's session and the afternoon breakout sessions. I hope you have an enjoyable and rewarding experience in this symposium. Thank you very much.
Chairman Mr. Jack So, Controller, State Controller John Chiang, Supervisor Michael Antonovich, and Mayor Richard Riordan. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here today in the City of Angels. It is great to see so many people here today, and thank you for your keen interest in the business opportunity in Hong Kong. Also, congratulations to the Hong Kong Trade Development Council for staging this Think Asia, Think Hong Kong symposium here in Los Angeles. When you think about business opportunities in Asia's vast emerging markets, and especially in the mainland of China, we want you to think Hong Kong first. That is because the shortest route for business between the mainland of China and anywhere else in the world is the route through Hong Kong. Chairman Jack So just indicated that there will be many speakers today to tell you exactly why I am first at bat and trying to use the next few minutes to tell you why this is the case and why American companies play such an important part in this channel for trade, investment, information, and ideas. Naturally, the United States is no stranger to the opportunities as well as the challenges of doing business in China and throughout Asia. We already have around 1,400 American companies operating in Hong Kong. That's more than any other foreign countries. Over half of these companies use Hong Kong as a base for their regional operation. There is plenty of space and rooms and opportunity for more U.S. companies to come to Hong Kong and experience Asia's world city firsthand. U.S. entrepreneurs choose Hong Kong because they know how the system works and how to work the system. It is a system familiar to the United States, a system that is based on the free flow of capital, goods, and services, a system that is open to new ideas and an unfettered exchange of information. It is a system based on international standards and a level playing field, which means that all companies, including local companies, mainland enterprises, and American firms, would compete side by side. Although we are a relatively small city with a population of 7 million people, Hong Kong is the 10th largest export market for U.S. goods, and that really speaks for itself. This trade has tripled in the past decades in value to $37.5 billion US dollars. Also in 2012, the U.S. was our largest overseas trading partner with bilateral trade value at almost $70 billion US dollars. Put simply, Hong Kong is a premium showcase for American firms to promote its high-quality goods and services in our parts of the world. We have a prime location in East Asia and strong connectivity with the rest of our region. We also welcome tens of millions of visitors to our city each year. Last year alone, 48 million people visited Hong Kong, of whom 35 million were from the mainland of China. Many come to Hong Kong to shop for the latest brands and fashions from the United States and other Western countries and markets. In other words, a ticket to Hong Kong is also a ticket to the vast Chinese market for the Made in USA or Made by USA label. Since Hong Kong's return to China in 1997, we have been able to preserve and enhance our unique corner of the country under the principle of one country, two systems. What is it? Under one country, two systems, we continue to maintain our own currency, the Hong Kong dollar, which is fully convertible and has been linked to the US dollar since 1983. We have no restriction on the flow of capital. We also maintain our own tried and trusted common law system with an independent judiciary. And we have our own low and simple tax regime. How low? Low taxes include profits tax of no more than 16.5% and salaries tax capped at 15%. I believe that is music to your ears. There is no capital gain. No capital gain tax, no inheritance tax, no VAT, and no GST. In the spirit of fair trade and fair play, international firms, including American firms, enjoy the same low tax rates as local companies. U.S. companies can also take advantage of our free trade pact with the mainland of China, which we call Closer Economic Partnership Arrangement, or CEPA in short. Under CEPA, products that meet some straightforward rule of origin criteria enjoy tariff-free access and entry into the mainland of China market. And I repeat, it's tariff-free, which means zero tariff. CEPA also gives preferential access to mainland market for companies in 48 services sectors, including key sectors such as financial services, legal, tourism, information technology, and trade and logistics services, just to name a few. Because CEPA rules are nationality neutral, U.S. firms incorporated in Hong Kong can enjoy the same benefits under CEPA as local companies in reaching the Chinese market and with a population of 1.3 billion, and that is 1.3 billion potential consumers. As we prepare to celebrate the 16th anniversary of the establishment of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of China on July 1st, it is business as usual for Hong Kong, and that also means business as usual for companies. I say business as usual because Hong Kong continues to be rated as the world's freest economy. We have been ranked number 1 by the Heritage Foundation here in the United States and also by the Fraser Institute in Canada for each of the past 19 years. We are also one of the most business-friendly cities in the world, rated as the second easiest place to do business by the 2013 World Bank's Doing Business report. In terms of financial connectivity, Hong Kong ranks alongside with London and New York as a leading hub for finance. Importantly for us, we are also designated by the Central People's Government in Beijing as China's global financial hub. So we have a very high stake in and huge commitment to promoting international financial stability and at the same time leading the smooth progress of financial liberalization in the mainland of China, the second largest economy in the world after the United States. With a transparent regulatory regime, free capital flow, the rule of law, and international connections, Hong Kong is a testing ground for the internationalization of the mainland currency, the renminbi. We have taken the lead in successfully introducing 3 key elements and areas of offshore renminbi banking, bond issuance, and trade settlement. What does this mean for companies here in the United States? First of all, American firms could do business in China, and in doing business can use Hong Kong's expertise as an offshore renminbi center to settle trade with their partners in the mainland China using renminbi. And that really means convenience and reduction of your currency risk. Also, U.S. companies can issue renminbi bonds in Hong Kong to raise capital for the operation in the mainland. An investor can take advantage of a city's world-class financial hub to expand their renminbi portfolio for themselves and also for the clients. Our focus is now twofold. First, we are working with the Ministry of Finance in Beijing to broaden the range of renminbi-denominated products. We welcome new revised rule for the renminbi qualified foreign institutional investor RQFII pilot scheme. The expansion of this pilot scheme will help to enhance Hong Kong's position as an offshore renminbi center. Secondly, we are working with other financial centers, most notably in Australia and in London, to facilitate the wider use of renminbi overseas. Ultimately, the widespread use of the renminbi is crucial for it to become a true international currency. We will continue to work with our financial counterparts here in the United States to achieve this goal in a smooth and sustainable manner. In this post-financial crisis era, stability and sustainability can only be achieved through much closer collaboration between our partners around the world. We also need a new mindset that puts international financial commitments above, or at least on par, with domestic interests. Hong Kong is generally ahead of the curve in implementing new global guidelines. This includes the latest Basel III standards for capital adequacy and disclosure requirement of banks. Our regulators strive to achieve the latest G20 requirements, and we are serious about commitments to tackling money laundering and financing of terrorism. All this contributes to Hong Kong's edge as a reliable and efficient international financial hub in the Asian time zone. My final topic today, which is something that's very close to my heart, is about ideas. More specifically, about how your ideas are protected in Hong Kong. Yesterday, I visited the Silicon Valley for the first time, a place known not only for its great idea, but also for its being able to turn these ideas into viable commercial solutions. Intellectual property, IP, is indeed the next gold rush as it becomes more widely traded across borders. It is big business for IP brokerages, auctions, clearinghouses, and exchanges looking to match IP buyers and sellers and monetizing IP rights. Taking a lead from the counterparts in the West, Chinese firms are increasingly seeing IP as a core business asset that should be built, managed, valued, and leveraged strategically to drive innovation and growth. As a regional platform for technology transfer, Hong Kong exported $1.1 billion worth of technologies to mainland China in 2010. We have a large pool of bilingual and experienced professionals who provide a comprehensive range of IP services and have the fingers on the pulse of the changing market demands. We have put in place a robust IP regime to protect the fruits of creativity and innovation in full compliance with the requirements of international IP treaties. With our sound financial and legal regimes under the principle of one country, two systems, Hong Kong is well suited to connect buyers and suppliers of IP in the mainland of China and here in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, I have outlined some of the reasons why Hong Kong is the shortest and most effective route for business, finance, ideas, and innovations between the United States and Asia, including the mainland of China. I hope this Think Asia, Think Hong Kong symposium will inspire more U.S. companies to come to our city to scale new heights with the ideas, brands, and innovations. You would be most welcome. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Good morning, Mr. Jack So, Mr. Greg So, Supervisor Mike Antonovich, our distinguished former mayor Richard Riordan, distinguished friends and guests. I am absolutely delighted to join all of you this morning. This is a very auspicious and august gathering of people. Let me offer my particular perspective as California's controller, California's chief fiscal officer. From an economic context, if we look at export growth in the United States in America over the last year, basically it has been flat. The growth in the economy has occurred because of international activity, so we had strong fixed investment. However, as we witnessed, 17 of the 20 largest countries have tremendous debt. Where we see areas of growth is in the Pacific Rim region of this globe. And so that presents magnificent opportunities and highlights the significance of this particular gathering. Now, as we have a transformation in the California and the United States economy from flat economic growth in regards to the export markets, we see increasing household wealth growth. And so we will have increased domestic demand. And so you see the difference between what happens with larger companies and smaller companies. We can shape the future by making sure that this gathering and gatherings such as this one present opportunities for medium and smaller size businesses. We know that America's GDP and America's relative status in terms of economic output has dropped from an all-time high of once 36% of the world's GDP to about today 23% of the world's economic output. That presents the opportunity for us to build the partnerships, the relationships, and the engagements that are critical to maintain our standard of living and to grow America's economy in the decades ahead. So one of the things that we need to do is to tap into the expertise that is abundant elsewhere. And I want to give credit to the Hong Kong Trade Development Council on this gathering, but I want to highlight an important fact as a state elected official. I appreciate your work because it is of the long view and it is sustained. You have been engaged in this period, this line of work for a long period of time. So you have worked to establish trust with your partners, and I think that is absolutely critical for commerce and industry leaders who are looking for leadership. In addition, you provide, as you do with this particular program, I think an outstanding set of offerings. First, if you go through the agenda, you see that you're providing great thought leadership, what is required for the 21st century. Secondly, you offer practical tools. Third, not only do you have the practical tools, but you bring the experts who can share the ideas, the experiences, and the case studies. In addition, you highlight major areas of growth, major areas of enterprise for the state of California. And it's just not here in Los Angeles, but it's throughout the state of California. As you will venture to Napa Valley, as you'll venture to our great city to the north, San Francisco, as you reach the natural food bounty that's provided in the central region of this state, you tap into the greatness of California's economy and present opportunities for people from throughout the reaches of the state of California. And then last, I want to highlight something that's personal to me. I have many, many dear friends who are in this room. They are shining examples of the relationship that Hong Kong and the United States and California can have. And they are experts and incredibly successful, and they are meaningful citizens and participants in our democracy. And so whether it's Daniel Fong, who's from Hong Kong, who has an international business, was featured in small business magazines as one of the fastest small business companies. And so he is a shining example of the type of business and trade that can occur across the oceans. Now, Daniel's not that old, but he's old enough to have a daughter and son who went to Harvard. His daughter, Tracy, started a successful business in Hong Kong. And so that highlights the opportunities for the next generations of Californians to create business opportunities. And then I want to highlight my friend Raymond Chiang, who invited me here, wanted to make sure that I showed up here. Raymond's another example of understanding what construction, architecture, building the infrastructure, financing the infrastructure that is critical to the reaches of all of us. And then I'll just highlight one last friend, Evans Lam. As Greg So pointed out, it's critical that we have the financial banking practices because we well understand that there are three critical elements to grow an economy. First, human capital, and that's why bringing the people of the world together is absolutely essential. Number two, access to financial capital, and we know that the world's credit pipelines have been constrained and difficult, and that's why we've had slower economic growth, but we are returning to prosperity. And then third, physical capital, as I mentioned, that Raymond's involved in. So let's focus on what's important. Let's bring the people together as you have done today, and then we will have shared prosperity going forward for each and every single one of us. Congratulations, and I wish you a successful day.
Mr. Chairman Jack So and Secretary Gregory So, it's a pleasure on behalf of Los Angeles County to welcome you to our county today and to welcome all those who are here to attend this wonderful program, Think Asia, Think Hong Kong. Los Angeles County, having 88 cities with 10 million citizens, have a very strong relationship with the Pacific Rim. We just recently had, this past month, I was able to work to have BYD locate to Los Angeles County, and they will be building their vehicles in Lancaster, one of our dynamic cities in our county, to be sold to another dynamic city, the city of Long Beach, which is also a port that welcomes many of the products from Hong Kong and Pacific Rim to our county. And I might add that those counties of this jurisdiction, of the cargo that comes in from the ports, 70% go outside our county boundaries to the rest of the United States. Over 70% to the rest of the United States. So we have a viable economic link to the Pacific Rim, to Hong Kong. And the formula, the economic formula that Hong Kong has had decade after decade of low taxes, a free market, a market-based economy, has been able to keep Hong Kong strong economically, whereas the other nations of the world, through fiscal policies of high debt, high taxes, excessive regulations, have kept them basically locked into stagnation and loss of jobs and loss of economic opportunity. So through these symposiums, where today we have it in our county and it's been across other parts of the United States, and then through various economic programs and trade delegations that we have both here and in Asia, bringing economic partners together, we can take that message back to our own jurisdictions to show that there is a recipe to have an economic formula so that your people throughout the world have jobs and economic opportunity, and through more trade and cooperation, a peaceful world. It's very important we have that, but Hong Kong has that formula, a proven formula that we can all learn from, be it a city, a county, a state, or a nation. It works for all people of all races, all colors and creeds. So we applaud the leadership that Hong Kong has provided, not just to Asia, but to the world. And we look forward to adopting those same types of policies here so we can have a better world and more peace through trade and economic cooperation. So welcome once again to Los Angeles County.
Welcome. Anyone who is here is smart because you want to be associated with Hong Kong or you're already associated with Hong Kong. Let me begin with a story. Back in 1988, Paul Volcker just left the Federal Reserve Bank. He became the chairman of a company called Jim Wolfenson and Company, and I was a client of theirs. And the first meeting I met with Paul, I said, Paul, when were you last in Hong Kong? He was really embarrassed. Up to that point, he had never been to Hong Kong. And I told him as we were walking out, now don't mind you, this gentleman is 6'8", 6'7", and I'm 5'3". As we were walking out, I said, Paul, let me tell you what we Hong Kong people tell foreigners, visitors. That is, if you don't know and understand Hong Kong, you don't understand the free market system. Now, saying this to Paul is quite a statement. And I'm happy to say that less than 10 years later, Paul and I became co-chair of the Hong Kong U.S. Business Council. He made it up. He became an expert of China. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's what you're going to go through today. if you don't know Hong Kong, this is your opportunity. Hong Kong, obviously, is a wonderful, wonderful city. Let me just give you 1 or 2 points. If you were to look at the hardware, Hong Kong is one of the very few cities, not in the West, not in Europe or North America, perhaps the only one, that is within 5-hour flight, not only to 40% of the world's population, but also to 25% of the world's GDP. We have another it's a nice city, not far, 4 hours down from us. They can claim that. We can reach 40% of the world's population within 5 hours, and some 25% plus of the world's GDP. And the hardware of Hong Kong, obviously, is truly amazing. You know, there are some cities that don't have a soul. Hong Kong has a soul. That's the hard side. Let me go to the soft side. It's a test. This morning, former Mayor Dick Reardon was with us. I think he might have still be here. But anyway, do you know the law firm with which he cut his teeth? You probably don't know. It's right here in this town. And 2 days ago, as co-chair of the Asia Society, I hosted dinner in Washington, D.C. for Tom Donnellan, our national security advisor. He worked for the same law firm right here in this town. Now, when they went to Asia, they set up their first office. Ladies and gentlemen, here's a quiz. Which city did they go to? I'm saying that I'm very honored to be invited by the then chair. I better not mention the name, otherwise everybody would know the firm. But he's now retired, so it's okay. Chuck Ben, and also the firm of Warren Christopher, to be the person who speak as a client how great the firm is, and truly it's a great firm coming from a great city. But when they go to Asia, where do they go? Who do they approach? It is we in Hong Kong. Another story. Many of you know Richard Holbrooke, right? The former U.S., unfortunately, the late U.S. ambassador to United Nations. One day he called me up and said, Ronnie, I have a very good friend who is the chairman of a major law firm, who's, by the way, the previous chairman was also a Secretary of State. But this is an East Coast firm, but it's still a very good firm. And they want to go to Asia, and I told them the best place is Hong Kong, and so both of them ended up at my home for dinner. Fast forward, they started up an office in Hong Kong. A couple of years later, I bumped into a senior partner for Asia. I said, how's business? After all, the firm, really had its origin in my home, And he said, oh, I'm so busy flying around all over the place. I said, what kind of deals are you doing? He said, oh, the latest business is, nowadays there's so many deals, financial deals relating to India. But where are the documentation done? Where are the lawyers? Where are the accountants? It's all in Hong Kong. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud that some of us are just born lucky. I wasn't born tall and handsome like my friend Stephen Bird, but I'm lucky in that I'm born not in Scotland, but in Hong Kong. Enough of my stories. I think this just want to set the stage to tell you that Hong Kong is truly a wonderful place. We have three very, very distinguished speakers here today. First of all, coming from Hong Kong, Margie Yang, my good friend. Margie is in the shirt-making business. They have their own brand. They grow their long fiber cotton. They do their dyeing. They do everything themselves. And in particular, in Xinjiang in Western China, she's extraordinarily green, sustainable in her business. And her nickname, I used to call her Queen of Xinjiang, but she opposes. She says Princess of Xinjiang. So, ladies and gentlemen. To my left, my immediate left is Stephen Bird, still in his 40s, but he accounts for, he is the CEO of Citi in Asia Pacific, and he accounts for something like 30% of the group's profit. He's so important to the organization that their CEO recently, when we approached him to ask him for one person to represent the bank at the board of the Asia Society, which I'm a co-chair, they suggested Stephen Bird, and he was officially elected yesterday. So wonderful, great to have you. His Scottish accent notwithstanding, he's really a great guy. Andy Bird is the chairman of Walt Disney International. Many of you know that this is an entertainment company. They are really unique in the world. There are many people who try to emulate them, but still nobody is Walt Disney and Disneyland, Disney World. The brand is just superior, and we're so delighted that you came to Hong Kong, opened your second theme park in Asia, in Hong Kong. There's only one, I've only heard one complaint about that theme park, and that is it is too small. So somehow, Andy, we have to address that later. But anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, for the time being, let's go back to Margie. Margie, the floor is yours. Tell us about Hong Kong, and then we'll go from there.
Later this morning, you will hear about a great company that started in Hong Kong called Li & Fung, which really, I think, coined the phrase supply chain management, started by two brothers. Well, they don't own anything, so that leaves a lot of opportunity for the women to have some business. So my company is run by two sisters, and we do dirty work for the brothers. So my biggest customer is sitting down there, so I have to be careful what I say. We make shirts, and we've been traditionally a U.S. supplier. I looked at my numbers recently in preparing for this trip, and I noticed that during the period after the elimination of quota and opening up of China, our business has grown threefold. Now, interestingly, the U.S. market is now only 40% of our total turnover, and 17% is China. But that 17% comes mostly from our traditional customers like Polo and Nike. So our customers are leveraging on their traditional resource like ourselves to enter a growing market, which is China. And for us, therefore, we are also able to leverage on their growth to expand our business, which is very, very good for both, I think. Now, going back to sisters in business, Hong Kong provides a very good infrastructure for women. Don't let it be missed that just because you only saw one woman in that video, Margaret, we have to make some changes. And also, I'm the only, Jack, I demand a doubling in my salary allowance because I'm the only women speaker, but don't let that fool you because there are many, many women conducting businesses. Ask Daniel's daughter, Tracy, right? Tracy started her, by the way, Tracy is my daughter's roommate at Harvard, so talk about connectivity. Women, my sister has 3 kids, and she's been able to lead a very balanced life, balancing her career and her family. So Hong Kong has a unique infrastructure that really supports women. Small, medium enterprise, which is really the economic driving force of the global economy, especially in the US. Hong Kong is a very good place for young people to start businesses, especially if they want to tackle the China market or Asia. So one entrepreneur is Mr. Jeffrey Ronan, who runs a Hong Kong wine bar specializing in California vintage. In his words, Hong Kong is like New York. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere in Asia. Now, when I visited the science park, I met a lot of Americans. And many young people like this kid from, well, he's not a kid, from MIT. He is Dr. Corey Kidd, who I had a particular interest in his work because he invented a robot that helps you to go on a diet. Many other companies are using Hong Kong to tackle the mainland. Big companies such as Boeing is also using Hong Kong. Now, Boeing recently started a Aviation Services Research Center at Hong Kong PolyU, where I'm council chair. And they didn't come because of me, but they came because the biggest market for Boeing growth area is the mainland. Now, why did they choose Hong Kong over other areas such as Tianjin? First of all, we have an expertise. We've been doing this for many years for companies like Boeing and Cathay. Secondly, I believe it is our intellectual property protection that they found useful. So I think we can be of use to different sizes of companies. Now, I want to go and answer Jack's question on why, didn't you ask the question, why not go direct? Why do you have to come to Hong Kong? I've got an answer. Maybe it's not politically correct, but let me try this on you. Hong Kong is like a beautiful, mature woman. We don't just jump at any chance. We are careful, we are humble, but we deliver what we promise.
By the way, the chairman of Boeing cut his teeth also in Hong Kong. He used to live in Hong Kong, and you'll be amazed how many CEOs around the world have, at one point or another, have had their career really boosted while they were in Hong Kong, such as our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Bird.
Good morning, everyone. It's really fantastic to be in LA, to be amongst the beautiful people in the most entrepreneurial city in the world. We just came in from New York, and I know you described this as June gloom, but I can tell you it still looks like sunny California to us. Yeah, John Steinbeck said that California has better days and more of them than any place else in the world, and we certainly agree. And that's why we're here to share our story about Hong Kong with you. And it's very appropriate to do that in California, where there's the highest concentration of Chinese in the US. So there's already a very, very rich legacy right back from the beginnings of the gold rush to the present day. And one of the great things about Hong Kong is that we are always looking out into the world and always seeking to learn. So as we're here, we want to learn from you also and be your bridge into what we think is the world's greatest growth opportunity, which is China. So what I'd like to do with my few minutes this morning is share with you a little bit about city in Asia. It's perhaps not very well known, the scale of our business in Asia. This slide tells you a little bit about it. So Citi came to Asia 111 years ago. And those visionary pioneers were really coming out to bring the great American century out into Asia. We came to six countries, China, India, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, and the Philippines in 1902. And today we still serve those great American companies that we brought out into the world back then. So right through the 20th century, all the names that you know and love, GE, Ford, GM, IBM, today Oracle, Microsoft, Apple, all of those clients are still our clients as they expand into Asia. But our business today, which spans 18 countries, as you can see here, and is 30% in Q1 this year, was 30% of the earnings of what is a fully recovered, fully earning city globally. It's a pan-Asian business. We have 60,000 employees, about 10% of them in Hong Kong, and our headquarters for the entire Asia business is Hong Kong. And we are in every line of business. So we are serving the corporations, the small, medium enterprises. We're serving all of the consumers, retail banking, credit cards, and consumer lending across Asia. Now, the theme of this conference is about thinking. Think Asia, think Hong Kong. Now, the way we think about our business and the way we've been investing in the business is trying to place the business in the heart of these three trends that are shown on the slide here, which is globalization, urbanization, and digitization. And these three trends, as you can see, I'll not give you all of the numbers, you can read some of them, are really the trends of our time. These are the trends which are reshaping the world. When you think of globalization, in 1990, exports as a share of GDP was only 17% because there was so much domestically trade. But the trade across the world, exports are now 26% of world output, and by 2030 will be 30% of world output. So the world is becoming, as you can see every metric you look at, increasingly interconnected, increasingly commercial, and trading with one another. Urbanization. If you look at, it took the United States, and the great American century, which was the 20th century, it took the United States 100 years to urbanize half of its population. Japan did that, admittedly, with 125 million people in 60 years. China has urbanized half of its population in 30 years, with a population that is 4 times larger than the United States. So urbanization, and then this next wave, which is the maturing of these urban cities. If you listen to Xi Jinping's speeches about the engine of growth, which is the true urbanization, where people move to the city, work in the city, get married in the city, have children in the city, have their children educated in the city, have got a pension entitlement where they can retire in that city. That's the next wave of growth that we are building into. Now, digitization. There's nothing we can tell you about digitization that you don't know, other than the fact that we in Hong Kong really get it. Hong Kong has a mobile subscription that's 223% of its population. That means that all of us have got 2.25 SIM cards. It's the I haven't found my quarter yet, but I've got 2. And it's a very, very wireless world. And that digitization has given all of us the ability to choose, transact, compare, communicate, and exchange our business ideas, as well as all the social connectivity that comes with that. And that's a massive trend of our time. Now, global companies coming to Asia, I mentioned some of those names, but let me give you some specific examples about Hong Kong that are compelling opportunities. Hong Kong is used as the pilot for financial services reform in China. So, for example, RMB internationalization, the internationalization of the Chinese currency, 80% of that trade is all through Hong Kong. Another example, foreign direct investment into China last year was $112 billion, and 64% of that FDI came through Hong Kong. And what we are doing is we are helping, now that this pool of RMB is building up, in Hong Kong, we are helping our clients to be able to access that liquidity at a lower cost than they would, for example, in mainland China. Because, of course, the Hong Kong dollar is linked to the US dollar, and it's an extremely low interest rate regime, and that is creating a funding opportunity for funding efficiency for our clients. But Asia is home to many emerging, what we call emerging market champions. I'll give you some numbers here, which I think are really quite staggering. There are literally thousands of examples of entrepreneurial firms that have become global firms. Our oldest client in Asia, Citibank's oldest client in Asia, is William Feng's company, Li & Feng. In fact, we've been honoured and privileged to serve Li & Feng since the very beginning. 3 generations of the Feng family. Let me give you some other names that show the reshaping of the world economy that is coming out of Asia. PetroChina was a $30 billion company in 2001. Very, very recent past. Today is a $245 billion company. Samsung. Right now here in LA, you're hosting E3. Samsung was a $31 billion company in 2001. Today is a $180 billion company. China Mobile, $66 billion, 2001, $226 billion today. Reliance Industries in India was only a $7 billion company in 2001, $47 billion today. And I could go on and on. So the reshaping of the world economy and the wealth opportunities that come with that are compelling. This slide, and I'll finish here as I hand over to Andy. This slide talks about the wealth creation that comes with those 3 other trends coming to fruition: globalization, urbanization, digitization. Hong Kong is today the 3rd largest wealth center in the world. It's Singapore, Switzerland, and Hong Kong. Hong Kong moved up from 4 to 3. And you can see that trend is inexorable. And when you look at that as a proof point of the Asia-Pacific opportunity and the opportunity for the whole Pacific Rim to be a part of those trends, it is something that we think is just compelling, and we would like you to be part of, and we want to help serve you do that. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
You know, I like your number. 64% of the $112 billion of FDI into mainland China come through Hong Kong. You know, it is said that why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. Well, Hong Kong is a place where the money is. We all know that Hong Kong has the biggest pool of RMB outside of the mainland of China. More transactions transacted in RMB outside of mainland China is in Hong Kong. That's where the money is. That's why I'm there. I don't want rob banks, but dummies like me can make some money. Maybe you can too. Andy Bird, tell us about why this great California company called Walt Disney should be in Hong Kong.
Thank you very much, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be here with you today. And I think all of you have to thank the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and Ronnie, because how many times in your life can you figuratively kill 2 birds with 1 stone? I want to talk to you this morning about why the Walt Disney Company chose Hong Kong to be the location for, as Ronnie mentioned, the 2nd of our theme parks in Asia, after Tokyo, which has been there for several decades now. As you can imagine, it's almost on a weekly basis. We are approached by individuals or by governments or states or cities, all wanting a Disneyland. And so we are very prudent and very selective in terms of where we choose to locate. What we think of is a very, very scarce and valuable resource for our company. I actually have a deep affinity and ties with Hong Kong myself. I first visited 30 years ago, and I've been back once or twice a year ever since then, both for pleasure and for work. And as I think back and look at the video that introduced the session this morning, I think of the scale of change that's happened in the territory. It's been quite profound. And our presence, Disney's presence, has also grown quite exponentially in the same period of time. I remember 30 years ago, the rickshaws outside the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, and you could almost step out of the lobby and fall into Hong Kong Harbour. And I think you've got to go for quite a walk now before you reach water. When Disney looked to start its international operations in Asia Pacific many decades ago, it chose Hong Kong to be its regional headquarters. And since then, we've, as I mentioned, grown our business presence within Hong Kong throughout our many different businesses that we operate as a company. But specifically, and what I wanted to talk about with you this morning, discuss with you this morning, is, of course, the opening a few years ago of Hong Kong Disneyland. As has been mentioned, Hong Kong is the gateway to mainland China and to the rest of the region. It's given us, Disney, the opportunity to reach out to vast Asian markets, the fastest growing in the world, and really understand this market in a way that we'd never been able to do otherwise. Hong Kong tops the infrastructure pillar in the latest Global Competitiveness Report, published by the World Economic Forum, reflecting the outstanding quality of its facilities across all modes of transportation. And that's something that's really vital for the success of Hong Kong Disneyland. None of those transportation infrastructures is more important than Hong Kong International Airport. The great connectivity that Hong Kong makes and makes it truly a gateway to Asia, with, as was mentioned, more than half of the world's population within a 5-hour flight of Hong Kong. And so for us, Hong Kong Disneyland has truly become an international theme park. In the past 8 years, Hong Kong Disneyland has welcomed about 40 million guests. And about 70% of that 40 million are coming from either mainland China or the rest of Asia. A great example of Hong Kong Disneyland's attraction throughout the Asian region is a recent marketing campaign called Jet Set Go, which we ran in India, on the Disney Channel in India. For 30 days, we offered a family a day the opportunity to win a place on a special Jet Airways flight for a weekend at Hong Kong Disneyland. In those 30 days, we received over 8.3 million entries. That was 8.3 million Indians who wanted to visit Hong Kong and Hong Kong Disneyland. Hong Kong Disneyland enables us to better understand the likes and the preferences of our consumers throughout Asia, and in particular, their consumption patterns. We're also better able to understand the Asian family makeup and how they travel, what they look for when they travel, and what they're wanting out of a Disney park. Now, Ronnie, you mentioned the size of Hong Kong Disneyland when it opened. And there are many factors that governed our thinking when we first formulated plans around the opening of Hong Kong Disneyland. As you can imagine, this is an enormously capital-intensive business. And we also had to take into account not just the economics of the park itself, but also the level of sophistication of some of the visitors to that park when we opened 8 years ago. And we were very, in close collaboration with our partners, the Hong Kong government, very wary of not creating something that would create a financial burden for either of us, but at the same time was able to lead visitors who'd never experienced a theme park, never mind a Disney theme park, either from the mainland of China or from elsewhere in Asia, the opportunity to enter into Hong Kong Disneyland. Recently, though, we launched a $465 million expansion project, which was just completed the third new area, which is Mystic Point, and the three themed areas, Toy Story Land, Grizzly Gulch, and Mystic Point, are expected to be the beginning of business drivers of expansion of Hong Kong Disneyland in the coming years. They're going to provide families with more unique Disney entertainment, attractions, and experiences, which make this resort a world-class destination. Toy Story Land was a first for Asia, and Grizzly Gulch and Mystic Point are truly first of a kind anywhere in the world, providing guests with unique stories and characters. As has been mentioned many times already this morning, Hong Kong also helps us bring our international brand to the 1.3 billion people in mainland China. In fact, about 45% of Hong Kong Disneyland's guests come from the mainland. We've maintained a very close relationship with our travel trade partners on the mainland to ensure that we have the right services and offerings for our guests. The rapid infrastructure development connecting Hong Kong to the mainland, such as the Express Rail Link, which will link the city into the national network in 2015, and the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, scheduled to be commissioned in 2016, bodes well for business growth, as it makes transportation between the mainland and Hong Kong even more efficient than it is today. Hong Kong Disneyland also has established 4 liaison offices in Beijing, in Shanghai, Chengdu, and Guangzhou through the Walt Disney Company. In recent years, there's an increased tendency for mainland Chinese to travel on an individual basis. They usually collect travel information and purchase travel products through their online platforms. Hence, Hong Kong Disneyland will continue to enhance cooperation with online travel agents and platforms to boost market penetration. As I mentioned earlier, Hong Kong Disneyland has been actively attracting guests from Malaysia, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. We're also the top Hong Kong attraction for guests from South Asia, with a quarter of our annual attendance driven from those countries in FY12. Dozens of contact points have been set up across Southeast Asia, with coverage even in Australia, promoting visitation to Hong Kong Disneyland. To further accommodate some of these guests, we introduced different types of food options, such as curry food in 2009 and halal food in early 2012, making us the very first theme park in Hong Kong to provide such service. All in all, Hong Kong presents a very valuable opportunity for the Walt Disney Company to expand and tap into the fast-growing Asian markets and establish a much bigger presence in the region. We've gained very valuable insights and experiences into the venturing into the regional markets using Hong Kong as a gateway, and we know that we'll continue to gain experience in the region as a result of our permanent presence in Hong Kong. Doing business in Hong Kong allows us to enjoy business efficiency while capitalizing on rapid growth in Asia. Overall, after all, tourism in Asia and the Pacific is forecast to be the fastest growing anywhere in the world over the next 2 decades. We believe that Hong Kong and Disney makes a great partnership, which we look forward to seeing grow in the coming years. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you. I have been receiving quite a few questions, so I have passed them on to Stephen and to Margie. I'll let them choose which one they want to answer. I'm a lazy guy. While they are looking at it, let me just mention a couple of things. One is, Hong Kong is truly an open city. Anybody from anywhere around the world is welcome in Hong Kong, and you are treated equally. The business opportunity that is available to one is available to all. I think that's why so many foreigners have come to Hong Kong, either as executives such as Stephen, or as entrepreneurs, starting their own business, and have become extraordinarily successful. And I was mindful that I missed another law firm. I told you 2 stories, one in Los Angeles and one in New York. I forgot another one. Actually, one of the senior partners, Rick Welch, is sitting right here from Bingham McCutcheon. When they want to open an office in Asia Pacific, together with Bingham Consultancy, the consulting branch, where did they go? They come to Hong Kong. And so I'm glad that Los Angeles people are very, very smart. They know where to go to get business done. Okay, Margie, you have a couple of questions there. Why don't you tell us what the questions are and then answer?
Okay. First question is, and this is to all speakers, as of when some Chinese cities evolve, such as Beijing and Shanghai, and as Hong Kong approaches the 2047 timeline, when the one country, two systems arrangement comes to an end, do you see Hong Kong's role that has been serving your company so well will change? If so, will your company change your business model in Hong Kong? Well, Hong Kong companies have always been changing. In fact, I don't think we need to wait till 2047 to change our business models. The one competitive advantage of being in Hong Kong is that you have a lot of transparency. You see what's happening all over the world. So there is this constant incentive for us to reinvent ourselves, just like any woman. We have to continuously reinvent ourselves to suit the environment. So even before 2047, we are changing our operation and business model. For example, for our company, we are adding a lot more, Stan G's smiley curve. We're climbing both sides of the smiley curve. On the one hand, my daughter, who is Tracy Fong's roommate, is doing her little, she's building a brand and doing retail and distribution, totally different from our traditional core business. We are adding a lot more technology to our operations, even though our company is in the traditional labor-intensive sector. There is a lot of, apart from material science, nanotechnology, which I continuously say, the chemists have dominated the technological development in our industry for a long time. Now the biologists are coming in. So we are looking at sequencing the cotton, because cotton is an endangered species. Some of you may not be aware of it, but that's a long story. To using technology, robotics, etc., in the manufacturing process. And so we're continuously changing. I don't know how to, I haven't really thought about changing, waiting till 2047 to change. So the second question is, what is your perspective on Latin America and the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Oh, sorry. Latin America, we have been in the Caribbean. We have tried manufacturing in Jamaica, taking advantage of 801, but it wasn't very successful, and it had nothing to do with the trade treaty. It was really, at the time, our company didn't have, a company like ours used to compete only based on really, really good labor. Now we've completely revamped the management model. So today, if we go to Latin America, maybe we could do better, but it takes a lot more management because in Latin America to make it successful. TPP. Well, I hope that TPP doesn't end up being a political issue. That I believe that trade really should be the driver for global prosperity. And I hope that trade negotiations and trade treaties does not have a counter effect. However, for our company, we are in Malaysia, we are in Vietnam, we are in Sri Lanka, we are in Mauritius, as well as the mainland. So for us, we've always been, many Hong Kong companies are in fact global companies. So we have different ways of dealing with these trade treaties. I'm not in favor of trade treaties. I am a firm believer of free trade, and I hope that there won't be we're not going into another period of trade treaties that are not adding value. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, you got a couple of questions there for you, so pass this on to Andy first. Thank you.
So the questions, the first one relates to urbanization, and the question is, with the urbanization in China, it can create an increasing financial burden for the Chinese government. Do you foresee that as a problem down the road, given the size of the population of 1.3 billion people? Well, the thing about urbanization that is take the Hong Kong example. Hong Kong is a 100% urban population. It's the most densely populated city in the world, 7 million people. There are 150 cities in the world that by 2025, most experts agree, will have 2/3 of the world economy in those cities. Now, the reason for that is that when people, there's many studies that have demonstrated that when people come together, what happens is cities are a locus of competition, sharing, education, massive growth of services. China in particular is trying to grow services. That's so important for the Chinese economy because as it develops away from being an export-dependent, low-wage economy, if you look at the 5-year plan, there are a couple of things that really stand out. One is the fact that Chinese wages are rising, and that's because China is moving up the value curve. And two, the increasing pension entitlement of the Chinese population. And what that does is that creates the confidence in future income and hence spending. So these things are all interlinked. The cities maturing as centres of services and as centres of economic activity. And it's not just the China story, but it's the same story in the United States. It's the same story in India and elsewhere in the world. With that, I think I'll hand over to Andy.
Thank you, brother. Cousin. A couple of questions here that are somewhat around a similar topic, so I'll try and deal with both of them at the same time. This is from Gregory Santana, who says, how does Hong Kong IP protection, how is that implemented in the mainland, especially for new production companies that do not have the brand status of Disney? And then Mr. Willis wrote, what specific investment opportunities exist in film, television, and music to help Americans understand and appreciate Hong Kong and its culture more, and vice versa? Well, I think firstly, the notion of IP protection, as you can imagine, for a company such as the Walt Disney Company is first and foremost behind everything that we do. We are a company that is built on not only our brands, but our intellectual property, and the respect of those intellectual property rights are very, very important. And that's one of the reasons why when we first expanded our operations internationally, we chose Hong Kong to be the headquarters for our Asia-Pacific business. And today, the majority of our deals in mainland China will fall under Hong Kong law. We will use the tried and trusted branches of the Hong Kong legal system that is very transparent and is very widely understood to be the foundation of the deals we do there. And within that, of course, there is a strong IP protection ethic. I think this afternoon at one of the breakout sessions of the Science Park presentation, you'll learn about how, where it comes to creating and innovating new IP in that area, how Hong Kong has really helped advantage companies. As it relates to specific opportunities that exist in investment in film and television and music, I think there is no greater. I think the video, in many ways, illustrated some of the great talent that exists within Hong Kong. And for a company such as Disney, there are lots and lots. We're a company that is founded on creativity. And that creativity takes a couple of forms. One is the actual idea itself, but much more importantly are the people who can then go and execute that idea, whether that's animators making an animated movie, Imagineers building an attraction at Hong Kong Disneyland, television producers working on Disney Channel. It's the creativity and the skill set of the people, whether they be in front or behind the camera, or whether they be crafts or tradespeople, that is very, very important and a real benefit that Hong Kong provides in that regard. It does also provide an enormous link into China and the vast and rapidly growing entertainment industry in the mainland. And that's not just of indigenous Chinese movies, which are enjoying enormous amount of success, increasingly outside of China as well as naturally within China, but also of Hollywood movies and television programs, even now stage theatrical productions. The whole realm of the entertainment opportunities within Hong Kong and through into mainland China, I think, is a very exciting opportunity, particularly for companies here in Los Angeles. Many of you, I guess, who are in the audience, it's a very, very good entree to look at the cracking the mainland China market and vice versa.
Okay, Maji, second round.
This is what the men do in Hong Kong. So this question is actually addressed to Ronnie Chan. He passes it to me. Okay, the question, this is a tough one. It says, Hong Kong is now a territory of China. Is there any year in the future that China mainland will interfere with Hong Kong operations? Well, okay, so the women are always tasked to answer these questions because, as my father says, as a woman, they don't really take count much of whatever you say, so feel free to say whatever you feel like. So, I think Hong Kong has a tremendous opportunity to show that the principles that we adhere to are beneficial for economic development, bring about prosperity, and influence the mainland. So I think it's a question of how we do what we do very well and do it so well that the mainland will follow. So I'm looking forward to the day. Well, actually, we are doing that now, and I hope that we will do more and more to influence mainland operations. Thank you.
Stephen?
Okay, there are three questions, and I'll try and deal with the three of them. They're all sort of linked. The first one was talking about the chart that showed middle-class income growth in China. So by 2025, 200 million people. Question was, what was the definition of middle class? And the definition was $10,000 per year income. A related statistic that was on the last chart, the wealth chart, was that Asia Pacific became the largest high net worth region of the world last year for the first time, overtaking the US. So Asia Pacific now has 3.4 million high net worth people. That's people who have got more than $1 million to invest. And that totals to 10.7 trillion in the Asia Pacific region. The next question is, can you talk about the role of Hong Kong banks and of Hong Kong in the expansion of RMB? A few things that really stand out. Think about the role of a currency. There's trading, investment, and reserves. So, people ask, is the RMB going to become a reserve currency of the world? First of all, in trading, It's only very relatively recently, it was 2010, that you could start to transact and settle in RMB. In the first quarter of 2013, 12% of China's trade was now being settled in its own currency. Now, and you can see that will increase, because why take the foreign exchange risk of buying in Brazilian reais, for example, when you can stay in your own currency? And if you have the power as the buyer to elect to agree a price in your own currency, then you will do that. So when you have the highest aggregate demand in the world for steel, concrete, oil, and all the other goods that go with it, you can see the trend will be increasing. The largest pool of that RMB is in Hong Kong banks today. So the next natural thing to do is to lend that money, and that's actually what's happening now. So the banks are lending out money in Hong Kong at a lower interest rate, because the Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollar, and we're in a lower for longer global interest rate regime, and that's helping fund needs. Two other things that are worth remembering about Hong Kong and why it's so exciting for raising capital. From 2007 to 2011, Hong Kong was the #1 IPO market in the world. Quite staggering. #1 IPO market in the world. And only in this 12th five-year plan has China actually explicitly called out Hong Kong's role as a global financial center. So China was evaluating and assessing how Hong Kong was developing, and has now called out Hong Kong as a global financial center. Last thing, the deliciously entitled dim sum bonds. Last year there was $18 billion raised in dim sum bonds in Hong Kong, bringing the stock to $40 billion outstanding now. So when you think about currencies, think about trading, investing, and reserving, and think about what is really a natural trend for what is the second largest economy, and is having an increasing preference to deal in its own currency.
Thank you. Andy?
Thank you again. Three quick questions all around the subject of the theme parks, actually. First, if Hong Kong is considered the gateway to Asia, why did Disney build its first park in Japan? And because they asked first? How are Hong Kong Disney and Tokyo Disneyland differently positioned? And that is I'll come back to that in a second, because a couple more. Do you plan to open a theme park in mainland China? If so, how much will it impact Hong Kong? The answer is yes. We're currently in construction of building a theme park in Shanghai, which is scheduled to open in late 2015. And the final question on that subject, how is Shanghai Disney going to affect Hong Kong Disneyland, as the majority of the guests come from China? Which is true. So whether it's Tokyo Disney Resort or Hong Kong Disneyland or Shanghai Disneyland, what we've striven to do and will continue to strive to do is what we call, firstly, create a uniqueness in each of the parks that visitors and guests can go and enjoy. Tokyo is quite a unique park. It has not only Tokyo Disneyland, but Tokyo Disney Sea. It actually appeals to a very unique guest, mainly Metro Tokyo based. Hong Kong I referenced earlier, and Shanghai, when it opens, just as Hong Kong has unique, once of a kind, unique attractions today, and will continue to have unique attractions and a unique set of propositions to guests. When Shanghai opens, it too will be different and unique, and cater largely for the vast number of people who live within Shanghai and its immediate environs. Just as in the US, we have a theme park here in Anaheim, in California, and also a theme park in Florida with Walt Disney World. We believe, given the size and scope of the China market, that there is more than enough demand, as it were, to fulfill both of those parks. I think Where Hong Kong is going to be more unique, and I touched on it in my remarks, is its ability to attract visitors from the broader Pan-Asian region who are wanting to come into Hong Kong and sample Hong Kong Disneyland that way, whereas Shanghai Disneyland is going to have an enormous amount of demand from the locale.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, one final round. Margie, answer one question, and then Stephen, and then I'll close up.
Okay, the question here is, what are the philanthropic requirements or opportunities for manufacturers? Well, I have openly said many times that my goal in life is to drive the philanthropist out of a job, because I feel that as industrialists, our duty is to be able to manage better so that we could raise the income of the bottom of the pyramid so that they will not be in such need for philanthropy. Now, final question is, this is a lady with a premium chocolate line asking me how to get access to, how to sell to the luxury ladies in China. I'm too pleasantly plump to be a spokesman, so I recommend that you talk to our lovely Margaret Fong of TDC, and she will be the perfect spokesman to help you bring your line of chocolate to China and Hong Kong. Stand up, Margaret. And with that, Ronnie, I'm going to run.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hong Kong has wonderful women. Thank you, Margie. Okay, Stephen, your last chance.
Okay, this question comes from Greg Gould of the also deliciously entitled Cafe Luca Coffee Roasters. So the question is, are we concerned about the middle class dependence on real estate investment in China? The People's Republic of China has put a few measures in place to curb overgrowth. Do you think it's enough? Well, a great question. What happens when you don't have a convertible currency, of course, is, and you create a lot of wealth in the country, that money has to go somewhere, and that's why there has been a lot of investment in property as a store of value. It's something that the Chinese government, and we spend a huge amount of time with all the different organs of the state understanding this phenomenon. We think that it's being very carefully managed. We think that it's moving in the Chinese government has openly spoken about the path to convertibility, the path to interest rate liberalization, of course, and one precedes the other. We think that it's, the Chinese are very, very smart, and we think that they have got a very good handle on the dynamic that is created by not having convertibility, and it is a progressive and carefully executed thing, and we have confidence in their ability to do that.
Thank you, Steve. Let me conclude by saying the following. There is 2 or 3 questions on Hong Kong versus Shanghai. I'm surprised that in Los Angeles, people should ask that question. New York is no question the #1 financial center in this country and in some ways in the world. Does that take away from Los Angeles? Are you guys hurting here in Los Angeles? I don't think so. I think you have done very well in high tech. You have done very well in fashion. You have done very well in theme parks. You have done very well in movies. You have done very well in entertainment in general. And so I think that the pie is getting bigger. We are not competing with anybody. There's no need. We're here working to enlarge the pie. And when the pie is enlarged so much, Hong Kong only has 7 million people. And let's face it, in many, many areas, we still have a commanding lead. For example, in the financial service field, our rule of law, our transparency, our currency being internationally transferable, and so forth. So I'm not worried about the competition that come from the outside. I think we should really concentrate on enlarging the pie. And by the way, whether you like it or not, the pie is enlarging. And my worry is whether Hong Kong will be able to cope with all the opportunities there rather than trying to perhaps take business from other cities. So let me finally say this. If you were to ask me what are the best economic opportunities in the 20th century, I would say probably the first 15 years or so. Go west, my son, go west. The second best opportunity is perhaps after the Second World War, the rebuilding of the war-torn countries. The 21st century is only, 12.5% gone. But I think it is quite fair to say that one of the best economic opportunities of this century got to be the rise of Asia, including, if not in particular, the rise of the mainland of China. I have a shopping center. I have many shopping centers in the mainland of China. By the way, the busiest shopping center in the world, in America, is just an hour drive from here, South Coast Plaza, Costa Mesa, Orange County. Many of you know that. They had around 23 million visitors a year. I have one shopping center in China that regularly does 3 times that much. I opened a new shopping center about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in a city that probably most of you, unless you're from China, don't know. It's called Jinan in Shandong province. My first year, I had over 20 million visitors. I almost surpassed the busiest in this country. So the opportunity that is presented ahead of us, in front of us, is monumental. I go to India a lot too. India is also doing very well. Indonesia is doing quite well, and many other places in my part of the world. And Hong Kong is just fortunate to be so well positioned that if anyone wants to do business in my part of the world, come to Hong Kong, we welcome you. It's the easiest place to do business. The cost of doing business is among the lowest, and we are among the most efficient. So perhaps I would just end with one last story, since I started with the story. It was said that somebody did a research. When you go to New York City, when you get in an elevator, how many seconds transpires between the first time you push a floor and the second times? It was something, I forgot the exact number, something like 8 or 10 seconds. And then you go to London, where you work for some time. In London, it's something like 17 seconds. In Hong Kong, what do? We just go like this. Hong Kong is a faster city because there's so much money to be made. Even a dummy like me can do it. I'm sure many of you can do it. So welcome to Hong Kong. If you need help, call up TDC. They have the best database as far as China business is concerned. And surely they also have very good database for the rest of Asia. So thanks a lot for joining us. I think we have a wonderful panel for which we should have a round of applause.